My name is Alessia, and I've always been obsessed with fashion. I spent most of my childhood sketching designs, creating outfits for my dolls, and watching my Nonna transform old clothes into something new and beautiful. As I grew older, my passion for fashion only intensified. I pursued a degree in fashion design, and after years of hard work, I finally launched my own label. It's been a dream come true, but it's not without its challenges. I've had to deal with demanding clients, tight deadlines, and the constant pressure to stay ahead of the curve. Despite all this, I love what I do. There's something about creating something from scratch, about bringing a design to life, that gives me a sense of satisfaction like nothing else. My boyfriend Lorenzo has been supportive of my career from the very beginning. We met in fashion school, and he's always been my biggest cheerleader. Or so I thought. I've been sharing my designs with him, trusting him with my ideas, and he's been helping me with my label. But little did I know that trust would be my biggest mistake. I remember the day I showed him my new collection. I was so excited to get his feedback. He was full of praise, telling me how talented I was and how he couldn't wait to see my designs on the runway. Now, I'm not so sure about his intentions. Something doesn't feel right, and I'm starting to wonder if I've made a huge mistake by trusting him. I push the thoughts aside, telling myself I'm just being paranoid, but the feeling lingers. And that's when it starts to unravel. The realization that maybe, just maybe, Lorenzo isn't who I thought he was. I walked into my studio, and Lorenzo was sitting at my desk, going through my sketches. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. He looked up, startled, and quickly gathered the papers. "Just looking for inspiration," he said, smiling. I felt a twinge of unease, but I pushed it aside. After all, we were partners, both in life and in our shared passion for design. We often collaborated on projects, and I valued his input. But as I watched him, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. A few days later, I was working on a new collection, and I couldn't find one of my sketchbooks. I searched every room, but it was nowhere to be found. I asked Lorenzo if he had seen it, but he denied taking it. I let it go, thinking maybe I had misplaced it myself. But then, I started noticing that some of my designs were showing up in his work. At first, it was just a few similar elements, but soon, entire pieces were identical to mine. I felt a growing sense of unease, wondering if he was using my work without my permission. One night, we were at a design event, and I saw one of my designs on a model with a label that read Lorenzo's Designs. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he do this to me? I approached him, trying to keep my cool. "That's my design," I said, my voice low. He looked at me, a mixture of guilt and defiance on his face. "It's just inspiration," he said. "You're being paranoid." I knew then that something was very wrong. I started to feel like I was losing control, like my work was being stolen from me. I decided to investigate further, to see just how much of my work he had taken. I began to dig through his designs, comparing them to mine. The more I looked, the more I realized that this was no coincidence. Lorenzo had been taking my work, passing it off as his own. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, wondering how he could do this to me. We had been together for years, and I thought we had a good relationship. But now, I wasn't so sure. I knew I had to confront him, to demand answers. But I also knew that this would change everything between us. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. I started noticing small changes in Lorenzo's behavior. He'd be secretive about his phone, quickly deleting messages and calls. When I asked him about his day, he'd brush it off, saying it was just work. But I knew something was off. I'd see him glancing at his phone, a fleeting look of guilt on his face. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he was just stressed about a project. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. One night, We were working on a project together, and I saw a message on his phone from someone named Bella. Who was Bella? I felt a pang of curiosity, but I didn't say anything. Instead, I asked him about his schedule for the next day. He seemed evasive, saying he had a meeting with a potential client. I didn't push the issue, but I made a mental note to look into it further. The next day, I decided to snoop around his studio. I knew it was a breach of trust, but my instincts were screaming at me to investigate. I searched through his desk drawers and files, but I didn't find anything incriminating. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a folder labeled Confidential. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. Inside, I found a contract between Lorenzo and a boutique owner. The designs listed were mine, but the name on the contract was Lorenzo's. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. What was going on? Was he using my designs without my permission? I didn't know what to think, but I knew I had to confront him. I left the studio, my mind racing with questions. As I walked home, I saw a boutique that I had never noticed before. The window display caught my eye, a dress that looked eerily similar to one of my designs. The boutique's name was Bella's Fashion. My heart sank. Who was Bella, and what did she have to do with Lorenzo? I felt a growing sense of unease, wondering if I was living a lie. I quickened my pace, my mind racing with possibilities. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, but I wasn't sure where to start. As I approached my apartment, I saw Lorenzo waiting for me outside. He smiled, but I couldn't return it. Something inside me had shifted, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked, noticing my expression. I hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. Part of me wanted to confront him right there, but another part wanted to gather more evidence before making a move. I decided to play it cool, to see if I could get more information out of him. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Little did he know, the game had just begun. I walked into the boutique, scanning the racks for inspiration. My eyes landed on a dress that made my heart skip a beat. The design, the fabric, the intricate details, it was all mine. But the price tag and the label read, Lorenzo's Designs. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. How did Lorenzo's boutique get my design? I knew I hadn't given him permission to use it. As I approached the sales associate, I noticed a woman standing behind the counter, smiling at me. "Welcome to Bella's Fashion," she said. "Can I help you find something?" I pointed to the dress, my voice shaking slightly. "Where did you get this design? Who created it?" The sales associate looked at me curiously. "This is one of Lorenzo's latest designs. He's our featured designer this season." My mind reeled as I processed the information. Lorenzo, my boyfriend, was selling my designs to his mistress's boutique. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "I'd like to speak to the owner, please," I said, trying to keep my composure. The sales associate nodded and called out to the woman behind the counter. "Bella, this customer would like to speak to you." Bella walked over, a warm smile on her face. "Hi, I'm Bella. How can I help you?" I took a deep breath, trying to contain my anger. "The dress you're selling, the design is mine. I didn't give permission for it to be used." Bella's expression changed from welcoming to surprised. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Lorenzo assured me that he owned the designs." My eyes narrowed. "Lorenzo?" I repeated, my voice low. "Yes, Lorenzo Bianchi. He's our featured designer." I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. Lorenzo Bianchi, my boyfriend, was not only selling my designs without my permission, but he was also working with his mistress's boutique. The betrayal cut deep. "I need to see the owner of the designs, Lorenzo Bianchi," I said, my voice firm. Bella looked taken aback. "I'm afraid that's not possible. He's Not available right now. I smiled tightly. I'll make sure he's available. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lorenzo's number. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message. Lorenzo, we need to talk. I'm at Bella's fashion. I know about the designs. I ended the call and turned to Bella. You should know that I'm the rightful owner of those designs. I'll be taking action to protect my intellectual property. Bella's expression turned worried. I didn't know. Let me call Lorenzo and— No, don't call him, I interrupted. I'll handle this. I turned and walked out of the boutique, my mind racing with questions and my heart burning with anger. How could Lorenzo do this to me? I thought we had a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. But now I wasn't so sure. As I walked out into the bright sunlight, I knew I had a long fight ahead of me. But I was ready. I was ready to take back control of my designs and my life. I walked into our apartment, my heart racing with anticipation. Lorenzo was sitting on the couch watching TV. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. Hey, how was your day? I didn't return his smile. Instead, I walked over to him and sat down beside him. We need to talk, I said, my voice firm. He looked at me curiously. What's going on? I pulled out my phone and showed him the pictures I had taken at the boutique. I know about your little secret, I said, my voice low. He looked at the pictures, and his expression changed. He seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging. Where did you— he started to ask. I interrupted him. Don't play dumb, Lorenzo. I know exactly what's going on. You're selling my designs to your mistress's boutique. He looked up at me, a mixture of guilt and defensiveness on his face. It's not what you think, he said. I laughed, a cold, hard sound. Oh, really? Then what is it? He hesitated, seeming to search for an explanation. I was just trying to make a living, he said finally. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt a surge of anger. You didn't mean to hurt me? You're using my designs, passing them off as your own, and selling them to your mistress's boutique. How did you think I would feel? He looked down, avoiding my gaze. I don't know, he muttered. I stood up, my anger boiling over. You don't know? You don't know? Let me tell you something, Lorenzo. I know exactly how I feel. I feel betrayed. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. He looked up at me, a hint of fear in his eyes. Please, just listen to me, he said. I shook my head. No, Lorenzo, I've listened to you for too long. It's time for me to take action. I walked over to my laptop and started typing away. What are you doing? He asked, standing up. I'm taking back control of my designs, I said. I'm going to expose you for what you are. He took a step towards me, his face pale. Don't do that, he said. Please, think about what you're doing. I looked up at him, my eyes cold. I've thought about it, Lorenzo. I've thought about it for a long time, and I've come to realize that I've been blind to what you've been doing, but not anymore. I continued typing away, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Lorenzo watched me, his eyes fixed on me with a mixture of fear and desperation. Stop, he said, his voice rising. You don't understand. I looked up at him, my expression unyielding. I understand perfectly, Lorenzo. I understand that you've been using me for your own gain, and it's going to stop. I finished typing and hit publish. The sound of the page loading seemed loud in the silence that followed. Lorenzo's face fell, and he knew that his world was about to come crashing down, and mine was about to change forever. Lorenzo sat in his studio, staring at his latest design. He was a talented designer, but he knew it wasn't enough. He needed more. He needed success, fame, and fortune, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get it. He thought about Alessia, his girlfriend, and her designs. She was talented, incredibly so, and he had been using her designs to further his own career. At first, it was just a few sketches, but soon he was taking more and more of her work. He justified it to himself, telling himself that he was helping her, that he was making her designs better. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was using her to get ahead. And he didn't care. He was willing to do whatever it took to achieve his goals, even if it meant hurting the people he loved. He thought about Bella, the boutique owner. She was a means to an end, a way for him to showcase his designs and make a name for himself. He didn't care about her, not really. He only cared about what she could do for him. And he would do whatever it took to keep her happy, to keep her selling his designs. He looked at his latest design, a dress that Alessia had created. He had taken it from her, passed it off as his own, and sold it to Bella's boutique. And it had been a huge success. He smiled to himself, feeling a sense of satisfaction. He was getting what he wanted, and he wouldn't let anyone stand in his way. Not even Alessia. He would keep using her designs, keep passing them off as his own, until he reached the top. And then he would discard her, like a used tissue. He didn't need her anymore. He would be a success, a famous designer, and she would be nothing. The thought made him smile, a cold, calculating smile. He was willing to do whatever it took to achieve his goals, and he wouldn't let anyone get in his way. Lorenzo's phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Bella. "Lorenzo, I love the latest designs," she said. "They're selling incredibly well. You're going to be a star." Lorenzo smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "Thank you, Bella. I'll keep working hard to deliver more great designs." He hung up the phone, feeling like he was on top of the world. Nothing could stop him now. Not even Alessia. I stood frozen, my mind reeling from the revelation. Lorenzo, the man I loved, the man I trusted, had been betraying me all along. He had been using my designs, passing them off as his own, and selling them to his mistress's boutique. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, followed by a deep sadness. How could he do this to me? How could he betray me so thoroughly? I thought about all the times I had trusted him, all the times I had shared my designs with him, and all the times I had supported him. And this is how he repaid me? I felt a surge of determination course through my veins. I would not let him get away with this. I would not let him ruin my career, my reputation, and my life. I would fight back, and I would make sure he paid for what he had done. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I needed to think clearly, to plan my next move. I walked over to my desk and sat down, my mind racing with ideas and strategies. I would expose him. I would make sure everyone knew what he had done. I would ruin his reputation, just like he had ruined mine. I started typing away on my computer, researching, planning, and plotting. My anger and sadness fueled my determination, and I worked tirelessly, driven by a single-minded purpose. I would take him down, and I would rise to the top. I would show him and everyone else that I was a talented designer, a force to be reckoned with. And I would do it all on my own terms. As I worked, my anger turned to a cold, hard resolve. I would not rest until I had achieved my goal. I would not rest until Lorenzo had paid for what he had done. And when I finally looked up from my computer, exhausted but satisfied, I knew that I had a plan. I knew exactly what I would do, and I was ready to take action. The game was on, and I was ready to play. I would not hold back, and I would not lose. I would win, no matter what it took. I started to notice the impact of Lorenzo's betrayal on my relationships and work. My clients began to question my integrity, wondering how my designs had ended up in Lorenzo's collections. Some of them even threatened to leave me, citing lack of trust. I tried to reassure them, but it was hard to regain their confidence. My colleagues and friends in the industry started to distance themselves from me, unsure of what to believe. Some of them even asked me directly if I had been involved in Lorenzo's designs. I felt like my reputation was being torn apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. My work suffered as well. I found it hard to concentrate, and my designs lacked the creativity and passion that I was known for. I started to doubt my own abilities, wondering if I was good enough, if I was talented enough. The pressure was mounting, and I felt like I was losing control. One day, I received an email from a prominent fashion critic asking for a statement about my involvement with Lorenzo's designs. I knew I had to respond, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to deny the obvious, but I also didn't want to admit to something I didn't do. I decided to be honest, to tell the truth about what had happened. I wrote a lengthy response, explaining how Lorenzo had stolen my designs and passed them off as his own. I attached evidence, including emails and documents that showed the extent of his betrayal. I hit send, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. I knew that this would be a turning point, that my reputation would either be restored or further damaged. The critic's response was swift, and it was positive. She wrote a scathing article about Lorenzo's actions, highlighting my bravery in coming forward. The article sparked a wave of support for me, with many in the industry rallying behind me. But not everyone was convinced, and some continued to question my integrity. I knew that I had a long road ahead of me, but I was determined to clear my name and restore my reputation. I was ready to fight, to prove that I was a talented designer, and that I would not be defined by Lorenzo's betrayal. I started to rebuild, to focus on my work and my passion for design. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the challenge head-on. I sat in front of my computer, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I worked on my plan for revenge. I had been thinking about this for weeks, and I was determined to expose Lorenzo's deceit to the entire industry. I started by creating a document, a blacklist of designers who had been involved in unethical practices. I included Lorenzo's name, along with evidence of his betrayal. I detailed how he had stolen my designs, passed them off as his own, and sold them to his mistress's boutique. I also included screenshots of our conversations, emails, and any other documentation that proved his guilt. As I worked on the document, I knew that I had to be careful. I couldn't just accuse Lorenzo without solid proof. I had to make sure that my evidence was irrefutable, that there was no way for him to deny or deflect the blame. I spent hours researching, gathering more evidence, and organizing my thoughts. Once I was satisfied with the document, I started to compile a list of industry professionals who would receive the blacklist. I included designers, models, photographers, and anyone else who worked in the fashion industry. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew about Lorenzo's deceit, that he would be shunned by the very people he needed to succeed. I took a deep breath, knowing that this would be a turning point. I would either succeed in exposing Lorenzo, or I would fail and face the consequences. I clicked the send button, and the blacklist was sent to hundreds of industry professionals. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, as the responses started to roll in. Designers and models who had worked with Lorenzo began to distance themselves from him, citing his deceitful practices. His mistress's boutique announced that they would no longer be working with him. The industry was turning against him, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. But I knew that this was just the beginning. Lorenzo would fight back, and I had to be prepared. I had to be ready to defend myself, to prove that I was telling the truth. I steeled myself for the battle ahead, knowing that it would be long and hard. But I was determined to win, to expose Lorenzo for what he was, and I would do whatever it took to make sure that he paid for what he had done. The industry would know the truth, and Lorenzo's reputation would be ruined. I would make sure of it. I walked into the boutique, my eyes scanning the room for Bella. I spotted her standing behind the counter, smiling at a customer. I made my way over to her, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, Bella looked up and saw me. Her expression changed from welcoming to wary. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cool. I didn't waste any time on small talk. I know what's been going on, I said, my voice low. I know about the designs. I know that Lorenzo has been passing off my work as his own. Bella's expression didn't change, but I could see the faintest glimmer of guilt in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice firm. But I wasn't buying it. Don't play dumb, I said, my voice rising. I have proof. I have evidence that shows Lorenzo has been using my designs without my permission. Bella's eyes flicked to the side, and I knew I had her. You knew, didn't you? I accused. You knew that Lorenzo was using my designs, and you went along with it. Bella's face reddened, and she looked away. I don't know what you're talking about, she repeated, but her voice was less convincing this time. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages, the emails, and the designs. This is the proof, I said. This is the evidence that shows Lorenzo's deceit, and I have more. Bella's eyes widened as she realized the extent of Lorenzo's betrayal. She looked at me, a mixture of anger and guilt on her face. How did you... she started to ask, but I cut her off. That's not important, I said. What's important is that you know the truth now, and you need to decide what you're going to do about it. Bella looked at me, her expression calculating. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to tell the truth, I said. I want you to tell everyone in the industry what Lorenzo has been doing. I want you to expose him for the deceitful person he is. Bella's face paled, and she looked around the boutique nervously. I don't know if I can do that, she said. Lorenzo he's a powerful person in this industry. I leaned in, my voice cold. You have a choice to make, Bella, I said. You can either stand with me and tell the truth, or you can stand with Lorenzo and suffer the consequences. The choice is yours. Bella looked at me, her eyes flashing with anger, but I could see the fear behind her eyes, the fear of being caught and exposed. I knew that I had her, and I knew that she would eventually crack. The question was, how long would it take? I stood tall, my eyes locked on Bella's as I confronted her about Lorenzo's deceit. You knew, didn't you? I accused, my voice firm but controlled. Bella's expression faltered, and she looked away, her eyes darting around the boutique as if searching for an escape. I don't know what you're talking about, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. But I wasn't having it. I took a step closer, my voice rising. Don't lie to me, Bella. I have proof. I know that Lorenzo has been passing off my designs as his own, and I know that you've been selling them in your boutique. Bella's face reddened, and she took a step back, her eyes flashing with anger. How dare you? She spat, her voice venomous. You think you can just come in here and accuse me of something like this? You have no idea what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed her the evidence, the messages, the emails, and the designs. Bella's eyes widened as she realized the extent of Lorenzo's betrayal, and her anger turned to shock. This can't be, she muttered, her voice barely audible. Lorenzo would never... I cut her off, my voice cold. Lorenzo would, and he did. And you knew about it, didn't you? Bella's eyes dropped, and she nodded slowly, her shoulders sagging in defeat. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. Lorenzo is a powerful person in this industry, and I didn't want to lose his business. I felt a surge of disgust at her admission. You prioritized your business over integrity, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. You let Lorenzo use my designs, and you profited from it. You're just as guilty as he is. Bella's face crumpled, and she looked like she might cry. But I wasn't interested in her tears. I wanted justice, and I wanted it now. What are you going to do about it? I demanded, my voice firm. Bella hesitated, her eyes darting around the boutique as if searching for an answer. I don't know, she stammered. I leaned in, my voice cold. You have a choice to make, Bella. You can either stand with me and expose Lorenzo's deceit, or you can stand with him and suffer the consequences. The choice is yours." Bella's eyes locked on mine, and I could see the fear and uncertainty in them. She knew she was caught, and she knew she had to make a decision. The question was, which path would she choose? The news of Lorenzo's deceit spread like wildfire through the industry. Designers, models, and influencers who had once clamored to work with him were now quick to distance themselves. His phone stopped ringing, and his emails went unanswered. The boutique that had been selling his designs, Bella's Fashion, announced that they would no longer be working with him. The statement was a public one, and it was clear that Bella had finally decided to come clean. "We apologize for our involvement with Lorenzo Bianchi," the statement read. "We had no knowledge of his deceitful practices, and we assure our customers that we will be conducting a thorough review of our business practices to ensure this kind of situation never happens again." The statement was a blow to Lorenzo's reputation, and it was clear that his business would suffer. Orders were canceled and contracts were terminated. The fashion world was turning against him, and he was powerless to stop it. I watched from the sidelines, a sense of satisfaction growing inside me. I had taken a risk by confronting Lorenzo and Bella, but it had paid off. My designs were finally getting the recognition they deserved, and Lorenzo's reputation was in tatters. But I knew that the fallout wasn't over yet. Lorenzo would fight back, and I had to be prepared. I had to be ready to defend myself and my work against any accusations he might make. I steeled myself for the battle ahead, knowing that it would be long and hard. But I was determined to come out on top. I was determined to protect my work and my reputation, no matter what it took. The industry was watching, and I knew that my next move would be crucial. Would I be able to rebuild my reputation and establish myself as a talented designer in my own right? Or would Lorenzo's accusations damage my career forever? I took a deep breath and stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I knew that I had done the right thing, and I was confident that my talent and hard work would ultimately prevail. The days that followed were chaotic, with Lorenzo's reputation continuing to crumble. He tried to fight back, to deny the accusations and salvage what was left of his business. But it was too late. The damage was done, and he was powerless to stop it. I, on the other hand, was gaining momentum. My designs were being featured in top fashion magazines, and I was getting requests from clients who wanted to work with me. My career was taking off, and I was finally getting the recognition I deserved. And Lorenzo? He was a shadow of his former self, a reminder that deceit and betrayal will always come back to haunt you in the end. I want to ask you, how would you handle a situation like this? Have you ever been in a similar situation where someone took credit for your work or ideas? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's discuss how to handle betrayal and deceit in the workplace, and how to protect your creative work from being stolen. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.